guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, "Neighbor destroyed my home with a bulldozer after trespassing on my property." My name is Tyler, and I bought a house next to an old, psychopathic drunk, and here is my survival story. You guys probably will think I'm making this up, but seriously, that man was insane. And wildly drunk most of the time. Anyway, this story starts with me buying a home off my uncle, kind of out in the forest I guess you could say. We live in Colorado and the home has a nice view of the mountains and is not close to a lot of neighbors. It wasn't really a nice house, but I wasn't living there full time because I was fixing it up and still had a few months left on my apartment lease. The place had a lot of issues, but Uncle Russ gave it to me on the cheap and that was a nice incentive. I was thinking, maybe if I liked it enough, I would live in it or I would sell it for a decent price after putting some time and money into it. That was until I met his crazy neighbor. His name was Jerry, and he was probably only 5.5 feet tall, portly and maybe in his late 60s. He never took off this torn-up hat with the Chevy logo on it. He also had several hound dogs that he kept in outdoor runs all year round. I know that he had some heated barns for them to use in the winter, thankfully. They barked constantly. Just loud, obnoxious baying all day long or any time that they see something in the freaking woods. Oh, and yeah. He made sure he educated me on how a bay is the specific type of bark that a hound dog like a beagle or a bloodhound makes when I went over and complained finally. Jerry started leaving piles of his dog's poop in my yard one day after I complained again about their constant barking. I might have told him I could call the police for a noise complaint after a certain time of the evening. That didn't go well. He cussed at me, something about how I didn't have respect for a huntin' man's dogs and their nature. I don't think it warranted his particular choice of action. I mean, it was a lot of crap, guys. Like maybe a wheelbarrow full just dumped right in the gravel driveway. He also didn't appreciate me in general. He blatantly told me that my uncle was an asshole for selling the property to me and not him. I guess he even called my uncle and gave him a piece of his mind for it. Russ just told me to ignore him and that he would leave me alone one day. I tried to do just that, and it worked for a week or two. I started cleaning the property once the weather warmed up some. Cutting down brush that was covering a large portion of the back half of the yard. There was a large barn for equipment that my uncle used to have, and the trees and other foliage had gotten super out of control behind it. As I went and started tearing away a bunch of weeds and crap, I found old engines and pieces of cars and boats and other machinery that were hidden by everything. Some old wire fencing and over a dozen tires that had brush and small trees growing through the middle of them. From the looks of it, the stuff had been there for a long time. It would take me forever to get through this and I would need some help too. I called my uncle, assuming that he would know something about the mess. I was thinking that I wished he had told me about all of it instead of just letting me stumble onto it by surprise. Russ said that he didn't know what I was talking about. He did say that one thing might be his from years ago, but for the most part he was unsure. I decided to go back and look at the stuff again, and I realized that there were several car parts that seemed familiar. Several Chevy tailgates and a hood with the emblem on it were found as I went deeper into the mess. I feel like I owed Jerry a visit over this, even though I know that it means he will probably spit in my face when I do. Jerry's house was probably about 100 yards away from mine. There wasn't another neighbor for over 2 miles in either direction. Just me, Jerry and the mountains. Well, probably some moose and bears as well. All of his stupid dogs are barking at me on my walk up to the house, so I knock a little loudly apparently. I can't hear anything over their noise, so I didn't realize that it was loud. Jerry yanks the door open, his face twisted in an angry frown. "What?" he shouts at me. "Why you banging on my door like that? You the cops, huh?" The stink of booze on his breath. "I'm sorry, Jerry. I wasn't trying to bang on the door. I thought I was knocking but the dogs." I was cut off by him puffing his chest and stepping out of the doorway towards me onto his cluttered front porch. "What about my damn dogs?" His voice cracks as it goes up an octave and his face flushes red with anger. He reached out and poked my chest. "I'm so sick of you bringing up my hounds." He is on his tiptoes as I'm almost 6 feet 3 inches, trying to get into my face. I step back and put my hands up, wanting to show I'm not there for a fight. I'd get crucified in court for beating up an old man. And I know that he is looking to push me into doing something stupid so he can probably sue me and take the house. Hey, don't touch me, man. I'm not here to talk about the freakin' dogs. He steps down ever so slightly. Until I bring up why I'm really there. It became pretty obvious once I started mentioning that I was cleaning up the brush behind the barn. Before I even said what I found, he started saying that he didn't leave anything back there. You accusing me of dumping trash on your uncle's property? His face flushes again, a weird look in his bloodshot eyes. Oh, you wait. You think you're going to accuse me of crap, boy? Look, Jerry. I'm just saying that a lot of the stuff I could match up with some of the junk cars you have kept over on the side of your garage. Russ says that he didn't have anything like that back there, and we don't have any other neighbors for miles. Who else could it be then? Jerry continued to make scoffing noises and wouldn't look me in the eye for a moment. I didn't dump anything, damn it. He insists several times. After a moment of silence, he suddenly becomes very serious. I told you I didn't do it, and if you come back onto my property, I will shoot you. I stared at him, I suppose in surprise. I didn't expect him to threaten to shoot me. This is your first warning, so I'll give you the count of 10 to leave before I get my gun. I decide to heed his warning and leave. This guy is crazy. How is he going to threaten my life over this type of thing? How has Russ not had any issues with him before? From there on it was trouble with Jerry. He started doing weird shit like leaving dead birds in my mailbox. The dogs seemed to be barking more than normal during the nighttime as well. There was a rusted out back end of a truck blocking the entrance to my driveway. More wheelbarrows of crap. My trash cans seemed to be filled with bags that weren't mine. I think that the worst had to be when he put a severed deer head on my back porch and draped the intestines over my railing and on the steps. I almost fell in the dark when I slipped on the nasty entrails. Not to mention the nightmarishness of cleaning that up and gagging. This went on for about a month, which I just now started living in the house full time. I had done several decent renovations and was working on finishing the kitchen. I was sick of trying to clean up all the heavy machinery behind the barn, so I hired a company to do it. Which cost me a pretty penny in labor and disposal of all the tires and old car and boat parts. I put the bill in Jerry's mailbox with a letter asking him to pay a certain portion of it. Yes, I'm poking the bear, but oh well. What else could he do to me? Nothing happened immediately. I'll admit, I expected something. I had installed some cameras around the property after the deer head incident. I plan on taking him to court at some point for all of his crazy BS. It was almost a week later, and I was in bed. The house is a ranch and has the bedrooms on one side and the kitchen and living room on the other. I was woken up by one of the loudest and most startling sounds I've ever heard, not to mention the shaking. I thought that there was an earthquake upon first waking. Then I realized it was not that. I ran out and saw a large piece of machinery, like a giant backhoe, just tearing through the north side of my kitchen. It's destroyed one wall already and is working on tearing down more. It's so dark and hard to see the operator, but I know who it is. That bastard, Jerry. I called the police immediately. My instinct is to just leave the house and probably hide until the cops get there. But instead, I go back to the destruction in my kitchen and see that the backhoe is heading in the direction of Jerry's house. I guess he is finished with my house for now. That was enough revenge for one night, huh? The police arrived shortly after Jerry left. Both of the first two cops were in complete shock as well. They had never seen someone bulldoze part of their neighbor's house. A report was taken, and they specifically noted the trail where the backhoe had come and gone, leading right to Jerry's garage. I stayed in a hotel for the rest of the night. It didn't take long for Jerry to get what he deserved for destroying my property. He was arrested for several different counts like criminal trespassing, property damage and endangerment. Because of his age and veteran status, he was let off a little easily. He had to pay me back for everything, of course, which totaled up to a lot of money. Over $200,000 in damages, plus more. He didn't have to stay in jail long, but he never came back to the house. He had to sell the property to pay for all the damages done to mine, and I'm not really sure where he's at now. I know he was a pain in the butt, but I never would have expected him to bulldoze part of my house. I feel sort of bad for sending an old man to jail, but I did manage to do some awesome renovations to the house afterward. I enjoy my beautiful view of the mountains from my nice new bay window in the kitchen every morning. The next story is titled, I'm Glad He's Dead. TLDR. Neighbor achieves life goal of homeowner association board member, uses homeowner association lawyer to threaten us over our treehouse. My neighborhood in Florida had a very good homeowner association. For the past 20 years that I've lived here, they've done a good job making sure the neighborhood looks nice, throwing an annual block party, and generally minding their own business. Until this crotchety old bastard down the street achieved his lifelong dream of being on the homeowner association board. He would take his nightly walk with his phone always out, documenting each and every infraction. I wish I was joking when I say he was out there with a tape measure looking at how tall grass was in different yards. This is a guy that would speed up when he saw small children playing in the street, and several of the parents on the street had already lodged complaints with the police about this. My father always wanted us to have a treehouse to play in when we were children. Sadly, he passed away when my youngest brother was only 2, and the one he built in our backyard had to be torn down due to hurricane damage. Luckily, my family planted an oak tree in our front yard right after we moved in, and about 15 years later it was big enough to put a small treehouse in. I built a simple platform with some supporting legs and a wooden ladder for my youngest brother to play in with his friends. One day while I was washing my car, an official from city code enforcement shows up. He said he was summoned by the homeowner association because of an illegal structure being erected. After talking with him for a bit, we came to the conclusion that not only was the treehouse legal, but it was also none of the city's business. The guy honestly seemed rather annoyed that he'd been called out for this. Next, we started getting threatening letters in the mail from the homeowner association's lawyer, threatening big fines for the perceived damage to the property value in the area. It was something to the tune of $100 a day for every day the structure wasn't taken down. My mother not being able to afford a lawyer and me not knowing better eventually complied when the letters started coming daily. I'm glad my brother got to enjoy it for a little bit, but I was so bitter at that old duck down the street. My mother called me and said that the old fart had finally died a few months back, alone, with no family to speak of. His house is scheduled to be demolished by the new owners. I honestly couldn't be happier that any trace of his presence is erased from this neighborhood. My brother is too old for a treehouse now, but I might just build one to spite the old duck's memory. The last story is titled, A Story of a Coup d'etat. Edit. I have removed the word sold from my posts, and so many people have pointed out that a homeowner association cannot be sold. I am aware of that. I merely chose that word because I wrote this post very quickly. What occurred was corruption and bribery, which is similar to being sold. Last year my community-run homeowner association was handed over to a corporation that manages homeowner associations in an act of what we believe to be bribery and corruption. I'm not a huge fan of homeowner association to begin with, but mine was pretty decent overall. Our dues were among the lowest in the city and in 20 years only went up $10. All matters were handled by the office staff or the board, who lived in the community. Despite never raising our dues, the homeowner association was extremely well run and as a result, always had enough money to operate and keep the neighborhood in immaculate condition. Last year the chairman of our board, without any notice to the residents, handed us over to this homeowner association management corporation located 60 miles away from us. He also fired a homeowner association all of our staff, including our PhD accountant and office manager. We got letters in the mail informing us, that's how we found out. I googled the company and as expected they had absolute shitty reviews from other people whose homeowner association had been absorbed by them. Our new accountant was a woman who had a degree in theater and became an accountant with only a few years' experience working entry-level positions at the management firm. Some of the residents in my neighborhood demanded an explanation from the chairman, and using a bylaw we never knew we had from the 1980s, he refused to answer our questions. We sued and tried to get this overturned, but that partially crumbled. What we did win though was the right to elect a new board chairman. Fast forward 6 months and we have since elected a new chairman, and right after winning she swapped sides and aligned with the management firm. She sent out letters saying big changes were coming and shortly after raised our dues by 20% and is forcing us to buy new, totally unnecessary, insurance policies against our houses. She has totally ducked us, and this is a neighborhood where a lot of retired folks live. They are now having to spend more money on dues and insurance to keep their homes. For all of you considering buying a home in a homeowner association, I strongly advise against it. We went from having a decent homeowner association that mostly left us alone for 30 years to a USSR homeowner association that is trying to duck us. Thanks for listening.